caramel inside.
Tell me when he's making the high sign. Are you ready,
Yep.
Yvette? Okay.
He's ready.
Like to call the Avalon City Council meeting to order to include a meeting of the City Council acting as the Housing Authority on this February 18th. And Councilman Hayes is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And if we could just have a few moments of silence for June Scaramucci, who passed away this February, and Henry Halverson, who was the mortician in Avalon for years. And I think he might have made it to his 100th birthday.
He did.
Yes. Please be seated. And Gabby, if we could have the roll call, please. Councilmember
Hayes.
Here.
Councilmember Olson.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Cassidy. Here. Mayor Marshall.
Here. Present.
I have a short presentation this evening on just some election information because there seems to be a lot of confusion, as rightly so, because this is a brand new election for the city to undertake, joining the municipal election with our county election, which was mandated. So I'll just give you some information first. You should have received like 3 separate booklets already in the mail. The first one's your voter guide. The next one was a vote center location, a whole booklet just for it. And then the last one was your official sample ballot, which had your candidate statements in it. Granted, this came after your vote by mails were received in the mail, so maybe some of you voted before this was out, and I believe the county is already rectifying that for the next election. So I'll just go through the presentation, and then there's time for questions, okay?
Great.
Here's some important election dates. Today was the last day to register for this upcoming election. The last day to request a vote by mail is next Tuesday, February 25th, and that has to be in the hands of the county by then. The 4-day vote center in Avalon, it starts Saturday, February 29th through March 2nd, and the hours are 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Election day, they extended those hours by a few hours, and it's 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., and that is up at the Catalina Country Club Dining Room, which is 1 Country Club Drive. LA County Register Recorder, County Clerks, will certify the election results by Friday, March 27th, which is a long time for us to wait. And then their certification goes to the LA County Board of Supervisors, and they have to certify those election results. So I anticipate being able to swear in our new officers by the first meeting in April. If you want to check your registration status, go to www.lavote.net, or you can contact the Register Recorder, and all this information is on the city website, and the number is provided there.
Could I just ask a quick question? Will the city clerk's office on March 3rd be posting the results as they've done as they come in prior elections?
I'll give you that information.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. It's a good question.
And could you go back to that phone number, because I didn't receive my ballot, so I need to contact them, I'm sure.
I'll tell you what to do with that also, Annie.
Oh, okay.
It's 1-800-815-2666.
Thank you.
And everyone should have received a vote by mail by now. If you haven't, contact them to find out. So I just want a little history of the Los Angeles County versus the City of Avalon small municipal election. On November 6th of 2018, the Avalon City Council passed an ordinance to meet the requirements set forth by Senate Bill 415, which was voter participation, which prohibits local governments from holding elections on any dates other than statewide election date, with the goal of increasing voter turnout. Locally, this means all voter registration, poll worker hiring, the training, the poll location logistics, the vote counting and processing, all conducted by the County of Los Angeles rather than the local city clerks. So that's why our results are going to be delayed. Regardless, the city clerk's office is confident in the process with the county from all our interactions with them. Some of the information has been slow getting to us, but we are very confident and feel very positive with this new process. I think it's going to help a lot of people be able to vote that hadn't been able to before. And the city clerk's office here, Gabby, myself, and Jennifer, we're all ready and eager and available to assist in any voting questions. They have this new voting system. Let's see, I think it was in September when that nice gentleman came, Ernie, I want to call him. He spent about 30 minutes telling us about the whole VSAP voting experience. So this is the county's website. It's easy, it's convenient, and it's accessible. And voters can go to any vote center in LA County. So if you happen to not be here for the 3 days that the voting is available in Avalon, you can go to any center over town, and that's in that booklet, where you find the vote centers. I just want to hit on some of these bullet points because I think they are important for the public to know about. The benefits of technology for an easy and accessible voting experience, and it is with a paper ballot. It's easy for voters to customize the voting experience to fit their needs. You can access 13 different languages. You can adjust the screen. You can adjust the text. So if you're having a hard time seeing, you can make the font larger. The contrasting for your vision if you need it brighter or if you need it darker. And there's also an audio headset and control pad. Security remains a top priority for LA County. That's why this device is not connected to a network or the internet, and that's why we won't have results right away. Previously, voters with mobility or visual challenges were asked to go to a separate voting booth, but not anymore. The ballot marking device provides all the accessibility features previously available and upgrades them all into one device. So remember, you'd go into a polling place and there'd be different precincts, and now it's just all in one because it's all electronically. I have a little 2-minute video. I think that will be helpful to the public to be able to view. So as you saw in the video, if you change the font size, it's going to decrease the number of candidates or measures or whatever's on that page, so you have to hit that more button, and that's what this is saying here. on this page. So don't hit next because it takes you to the next section. So you have to hit more if there's, if you've increased the size or there's more candidates. Common election questions that we've received so far, and this is important. If you are registered with a political party, you can vote for a candidate running for president of that party. If you are registered with no party preference, you can vote in the presidential primary for the following parties: American Independent, Democratic, and Libertarian. You can select the party ballot at your polling place. If you vote by mail, you will be sent details to select a party ballot. If you register with no party preference and want to vote in the presidential primary for one of the following political parties: Republican, Green, Peace and Freedom, as of today, you're too late to re-register for any of those. You would have received that card that's over to the right. You would have received that in the mail if you had no party preference, and you would have torn off the bottom tab and picked one of your party affiliations that you chose. And also, the county sent out another letter to people that had no party preference telling you exactly what to do also. So they were busy sending out literature. I hope everyone received it. Common election questions that we've received: a vote by mail ballots. Where can I turn my ballot in? You can go to the Avalon Library during any of their operating hours. On the election poll, February 29th through March 3rd. Or you can mail in your vote by mail, and as long as it's postmarked prior to the close of polls. Why did I receive a vote by mail ballot this year? So we've gotten a lot of calls. I'm not a permanent vote by mail, so why did I receive a vote by mail ballot? Under the California Voters' Choice Act, which was passed in 2016, the register recorders will automatically issue a vote by mail ballot for the election if the voter resides in a U.S. congressional or state legislative district that has constituents in both Los Angeles and Orange counties. In this upcoming election, our 47th congressional district seat, which is Alan Lowenthal, is on the ballot. And this district encompasses LA and Orange County. Orange County is a vote by mail only district, therefore every constituent eligible to vote in this contest is required to be issued a vote by mail ballot. Every voter in Avalon should have received a vote by mail. If you haven't, please contact the county. They might have you listed as an inactive voter for whatever reason, and they need to issue something or give you the authority to be able to vote. Nobody will be turned away at the polls. It's very important for you to know. If you go to the polls and you say, I threw out my vote by mail because I never do vote by mail and I want to vote at the polls, that is just fine. They'll give you a provisional vote. You vote, it gets put in a pink envelope and gets sent to the county. Now, some people think that that's going to require a greater length of time, but actually be faster than us getting our provisional votes here in a city-run election, because we would have to verify signatures here, then we had to send them to the county for them to verify, so it would take a longer length of time. And once the county receives the provisional vote by mails, they just double-check to make sure that you have not actually voted with your vote by mail, and now you're trying to vote a second time. And once they make sure that you haven't voted, they count that vote. Vote by mail ballots. What if I do not want to vote by mail? Easy. A voter will receive the vote by mail. You can still vote at the polls. The easiest option is to bring your ballot, surrender it at the polls. It will be marked void, whether the voter completed it or not, and the vote via the VSAP ballot marking device. The voter unable to locate, as I just said to you, you just tell them that and you'll be able to vote provisionally. We have a lot of these questions and others. We hope the information on our city website, there's a link just for our election 2020. It has the list of our qualified candidates, our ballot measure in Texas, and a link to archive videos of where the 2 candidate forums that were held here in the council chambers. We did get notified today that the workers at the polling place are local people, and we have one There's going to be one county IT guy that is supposed to be there every day to answer any questions if something goes wrong. Thank goodness. Gabby and myself and Jennifer will be attending the trainings so hopefully that we would be able to assist and answer any questions throughout the voting days. I can't say that we will be there all day because of other events taking on, but we hope this will be a very successful election. And I think that's it.
Any questions?
Oh, did I already say that by 8:30, the night of the election on March 3rd is when the first vote by mails will be counted, and they should have something posted by 8:30. And as the county will continually be updating their website, which will have a link on our main page that people can go and check on the results.
Great, thank you. That was very thorough. Okay. Announcements and written communications.
I have 2 written communications this evening. One is on item number 3, which is the Joe Machado Field lease. Number 7, which is the DIF. Just acknowledgement of those letters. And the council received item number 7, one in an email, but I provided copies to everybody.
Okay. Department head reports.
Good evening, Bob Greenlaw, Director of Public Works. Got 4 items for you tonight. The Coastal Commission has rescheduled their visit to the island to review our projects. March 13th, they'll be here. Also, we've got another commission, California Transportation Commission staff has scheduled an island visit for March 9th to review projects. And that's very important to us because they're the funding agencies for active transportation projects from Senate Bill 1. So we're interested in getting some more funding for the 5 corners so that we can include everything in one phase. So that was exciting that they announced that they would come out and look at our projects. Also, the parking study that included Catalina, Descanso, and Beacon concludes at the end of February. So just reminding everybody, get on the city's website. You're encouraged to provide input. The survey is available at www.cityofavalon.com/parking. It has about 15 questions, and we expect to report the results and provide recommendations in April to the council. And then there's one other, we've had a lot of questions about the railing potential at Sumner, so we thought we'd at least share what we've been working on. This is a design that has kelp, since we are an island that has kelp. And so the possibility to be at the 3 curb ramps that we installed that have the potential for fall, so we wanted to put fall protection with the rail. Right now they have a very temporary interim railing there, that green colored railing that we have. The price for these is about $3,600 per location to fabricate. We can install them, so that's really what we've been fussing with because they were a little bit higher price. But we did want to do something with a public art component so that we could dress up, because that is a major intersection for us, and we thought that we could tie it all together. There has been some offers of potential donations, so if we could get that out to the public, where if we could get, at least half of this, it would be probably more feasible for us to be able to do this. So I wanted to share you where we were at that, and then put that out to the public. If there's offers of donation for public art, this is a great location to get out there to be working with the city.
I have a question. Have you given any consideration to color?
I think it would be a color that would be something that would be organic with the kelp design, so okay. I don't know if Pier Green would go with the kelp design, but right. something that would be a natural coloring, but it would be likely something that would be an epoxy that would withstand the weather, because this is going to definitely be metal railing.
Well, I was talking to an artist friend, and he was talking about yellow being, that's why school buses are yellow, a lot of things are yellow because that's what your eye sees well. So I don't know, because I don't know how dark it is on those corners. I'm not hanging out there at night, but I don't know if yellow and then green for the kelp or something, just to make sure that they are visible, I guess, is my concern.
Well, I guess as we move forward, and it seems like it's going to happen, we
Yeah.
would present that here so the public could have input on the color.
Yeah.
And that sure that we have design. This design, I think, would be successful here, and it would be low maintenance for us. too.
Yeah. And you found a local or over town?
It's over town.
Yeah.
And actually, where we got this from was our landscape architect from the Five Corners project has put railings like this in another location. So,
Great.
and he's also helping us get the public art component when
Yes,
we do the Five
I
Corners.
like that too.
Okay.
Great.
So that's where we're at in that.
Comments?
I have one quick question for you. That's great. Do we have a timeline or any work being projected for the Pebbly Beach Road rock removal behind the chain link?
So I was just looking today of what our constraints are. Of course, we got Easter, spring break, in between, the 12th. So in between the 3rd and like 19th of April is a no-go. And then we have also, as we approach Memorial Day. So we are going to be doing that one slide removal in next month, so in March. So that would also be a good time to get a majority of the work done on Pebbly Beach Road. If we're talking about, the debris removal
Yeah.
piece, yes.
Right,
Because then
great.
we also have the revetment project, which will likely start right after Labor Day. So once the major visitor season's over, then we can get on that road with a
All right.
contractor.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you, Bob.
Captain John Hocking, LA County Sheriff's Department. Thank you. No presentation tonight. If you don't remember anything that I say, please remember this one sentence. If you find yourself purchasing a gift card for somebody that you do not know, such as if it's a family member, their birthday, and you want to buy them an iTunes card or a blue dot or a green dot card, go ahead and do it. If you're buying a card for somebody that you do not know, do not purchase the card. There's a million scams out there. There are scams where they call and pretend to be IRS, they call and pretend to be law enforcement, there's one going on now that is focused more on Avalon than ever before. And that scam is using the Sheriff's Department and the names they find on the Sheriff's Department's website and the City of Avalon's website, such as mine, and they get a mail to call. They say you have a warrant, you aren't showing up for court, you don't have a warrant, you know nothing about a warrant, but you want to play it safe. So the caller tells you to go to Vaughn's on Sumner, so they know exactly how our city works, purchase a card, and then send them the card number. If you find yourself in that predicament, call us. Call the Sheriff's Department at the main line, 310-510-0174. They will give you a number to call the suspects, and they pretend it's a recording, and they pretend to be law enforcement. They can pretend to be the mayor, they can pretend to be a council member, they can pretend to be anybody. So, back to it. If you find yourself purchasing a card for somebody you do not know, do not purchase it. We've talked to Vaughn's, so if somebody's coming up, what's really frustrating for us is when somebody walks into the lobby and they tell us that they fell for that scam and they're out $800, $50,000, name it. And it's just so frustrating for us that people keep falling for this scam. Yeah. So please do not fall for it. It is a scam. Contact us. Our doors open 24/7. Come in there, talk to me personally. We will help you. But if it's on the phone, you never know who you're talking to.
All right, yeah.
Does anybody have any questions?
No, but thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
There's usually a slew of us coming up. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Just a handful of things coming from the Community Services Department between now and the end of February, starting with tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. We start the registration process for our Spring Festival booths, so we'll make that available starting tomorrow. On Thursday in council chambers from 11:15 to 3 o'clock, HEAP, the Home Energy Assistance Program, is going to be here. We have been able to assist in the past with electrical utilities up to about $200. They're going to be able to assist with both heating and electric utility costs between $184 to $339 in financial assistance for those that are low income and qualify for it. So it's 11:15 to 3 o'clock here, council chambers. There'll be a couple staff. There'll be somebody that will be translating as well. You need to bring a January or February utility bill, proof of income, and some ID, and they can assist you in getting signed up for that. Running Club will start next week. I think I brought this to you last meeting, but it's Tuesdays from 4 to 5:15 for junior high and high school students. It's an 8-week program. This weekend will be our youth basketball tryouts from 4 to 8, an hour slot starting at 4 o'clock, so 4, 5, 6, and 7. We can register you here at City Hall. You can register online between now and Friday, and or at the gymnasium on Saturday from 4 to 8. Our homeless program steering committee, I think we last met in October. We're going to be meeting Tuesday the 25th here at City Hall at 5:30. Our Outrigger preseason meeting will be here next Thursday at 5:30 as we get ready to kick off that program. Community Garden is going to kick off in the next couple weeks on the 29th. They will have a get the garden kind of prepped for planting, and then their first planting will be on the 7th. Those are both 8 o'clocks on Saturday mornings. The 29th of February, we're going to be doing our leapfrog contest down Front Street. I hear heads shaking that they can't wait to do that. So we're inviting the community out. It's leap day. We thought we'd try and have something fun with that. A couple last things. We had our activity guide will be out by the end of the month for spring and summer. And then we made some, I think there were some comments, I've got some personal comments and some comments on Facebook. We made some improvements to City Park with some new benches and some umbrellas up there. We're going to do some landscaping up there. We are getting to lights. We'll be doing lights next to kind of just clean that park up a little bit. So that's it from us.
Questions, anyone?
Could you just remind me of the date of Springfest again?
It is the 9th, April 9th.
April 9th. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Is that it? No, we'll be hearing from our finance director soon. Okay, city manager report?
I have nothing else to say.
Okay, do you have anything for us, Elizabeth?
I do not have anything for you this evening.
Okay, and this is Elizabeth Hull with BB&K, and it's her birthday today, so happy birthday.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So lucky to be with us.
Okay, council member reports?
Just something personal. My wife's mom turned 100 on Sunday.
Wow,
Yeah, it's cool.
that's cool.
Up in beautiful Bozeman, Montana. That's why I'll go get my wife on Thursday.
Oh, she's up there now?
She's up there now, yeah.
Oh, sweet.
I don't have anything tonight.
I have a couple things. One, I should have actually done over announcements, so I'm sorry I was a little behind the game, but just want to announce that Paul Romo, who is one of the teachers at school, he teaches the hospitality and tourism course. It's a CTE course at the high school. Has put together a family movie night with his students sort of in charge, doing an event. It will be at the casino on Tuesday, March 3rd at 6 p.m. This is really exciting. This is one of the things that we've been talking about in the community is finding ways to still utilize the movie theater. So thank you to the Island Company for making that available, and also to Paul himself for working with his students to teach them how to do events and fundraisers. I sincerely apologize. I don't know the price of the tickets.
$5.
Lisa? $5 for the price of the tickets. You can buy tickets at the door, or you can also ahead of time after tomorrow. The tickets will arrive tomorrow, but after tomorrow you can purchase tickets ahead of time at either Cafe Metropole or Chet's Hardware. So thank you, Paul, for that. And then I attended the Gateway Cities Council of Government meeting and want to announce, very exciting, for the third year in a row, that the annual Gateway COG Retreat is going to be held here in Avalon. There'll be representatives from 27 different cities in our region, and as part of that, we work together for the greater good of our region. That is what this council is, that the city's a part of, and I sit on that seat for us. It'll be 29th of April, 1st of May. Very exciting for city staff. There'll be some good topics as well. There was also a discussion about the upcoming census and process and successes and failures in other cities, and there was really good information passed around about relative to what cities are successful, and between now and the next meeting we'll get some information on those that have a high response rate. What are they doing? What's the right thing? So I'll pass those along to the city. But also one of the things was, what is your city doing? What have you guys got put in place for the census? We all know that the census is critically important for funding for our community. So I know that the city has been working on this, but it would be great if we could get a little bit of an update, maybe at the next council meeting. If we have volunteers, if we need volunteers, kind of what our plan is.
Okay. I'll have Amanda do it. She's in charge of that program, and I know she's been actively in contact with the mainland. So
that would be great. So if there is a need for volunteers, I just want to make sure we get it out there early as well. And then the last item that was of great importance, and I'm sorry I did not get a chance to ask my question before the meeting, but do we know if the city has applied under the AB 101, the LEAP grants? I know this is really an Audra question, but it's basically the local early action planning grant, and I'm almost positive that the city's already gone after this, but the eligible grant amount is $65,000, and it's essentially all we have to do is apply for it. It's just given. So the reason I'm really pointing this out is I know that our grants administration is always on top of these, but this is $65,000 that's going to be coming to our city. So this is a great thing, and it's also great that we sit on this board so that we make sure we learn all these things.
SCAG, and I went to SCAG, it's the same.
It's the same information.
Exactly,
yeah.
Exactly.
And that is one last thing that I'll say, just so it doesn't cloud the item number 7, but we did receive communication today. I will speak personally, but I know that there are some other comments from council as well, that sending communications to the council is really awesome. It's great to receive information to help us make good decisions. It's really hard to receive information an hour before the meeting. It does not give us an opportunity to really take the comments and really delve into it in regard to an item. So I just want to say, please, if you have comments to send on our council agenda, please do send them well enough in advance that we can actually help utilize those as our decision-making process happens.
Well said. Just 2 things. We want to remind the voters that there is a 1/4% sales tax on the ballot, and I believe all of us sitting up here would like you to support that, because that'll could bring in approximately $250,000 in additional general fund revenue, which is very helpful. So please support that sales tax. Also, just a little thing, I talked to Denise and Mr. Palmer. We had approved 4 methanol carts for Buddy Wilson to do that on an experimental basis, and that project is basically dead. So, yeah.
Bummer.
I heard it from Conrado, then also heard it from Origin Fuel Cell. Their model needs to be bigger than that, and with Buddy moving all of his stuff down to one side, his model's kind of changing, and then there was an expense as well for those 4 golf carts. So So anyway, that's dead for now. That's all I have. Yes.
Did I hear that correctly?
What? Come to the... Thank you, Judy.
Did I hear correctly that the 0.25% sales tax does not apply to food?
That's correct. Groceries are not taxed.
So this has to do with your souvenirs and your, T-shirts more than anything that most islanders would have to worry about. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Oral communication. This is an opportunity for people in the audience to speak on items that are not on the agenda. You will be limited to 3 minutes and no action will be taken.
Hi, Lisa Lavelle. Just wanted to give everyone a heads up that we're hoping to actually host a question and answer session on the 27th of February, Thursday evening. We're just waiting to confirm the location, but we'll have 2 immigration rights attorneys who also specialize in answering questions of legality with regards to the census. And it'll be in English and in Spanish, so hopefully if everyone can attend that. Once we have more info, we'll be passing out flyers and details. And then just wanted to also address with the vote by mail ballots. I've had a number of people say they whited out their selection and then dropped it in the mail. I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, the correct thing to do is to take your ballot and surrender it so you can get a fresh copy and redo it. Please make sure that you're not whiting out your ballot. It may not be read when you actually mail it in, but I've heard of at least 3 different instances of that happening for people who had not previously used a vote by mail ballot before. So, and then finally, to quell any rumors and fun, no, my sister is not counting votes. Thank you.
Will that meeting be at the church probably?
That's what we're hoping.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Lisa. That's good information. Anybody else? Where's Paul?
He's not here.
Okay, all righty, Paul, we miss you. Okay, we'll move on to the consent calendar.
We have correction to the consent calendar. We only have 2 items this evening on consent. Item number 3 is in general business, and it was mismarked in consent calendar. So the 2 consent calendar items this evening are minutes. They are from the February 4th, 2020 regular meeting of the City Council. We have warrants for a total disbursement of $677,567.84, and that's from the time period of January 25th through February 7th of 2020.
Move staff on 1 and 2.
Second. Third.
Okay, call for the vote.
All ayes.
Thank you. Okay, item number 3.
Okay, so the first item on general business is the lease agreement at Joe Machado Field for the snack bar concessions, and I'm going to have Dan come up and work you through it.
Good evening, and thank you for hearing this item again. At your last meeting, we brought to your attention that the lease agreement and the operator at the time, Ivan Leba, is put in a 60-day notice to actually transfer, his goal is to transfer his lease to Matt Affolter. After some discussion, council went back and forth and asked that staff bring back, submit to Matt the bid process, the same bid process that Ivan and the rest of the folks that went through previously to Matt, and then have Matt submit his a proposal, in which you received in your packet. Staff has gone through it. It looks like everything we've asked for is there, and we are recommending that council approve the agreement to move forward with a 2-year term for Matt to operate the food services at JMF with a 34-month option to renew. The reason for the 34-month, it ties it back into the expiration date of the original lease agreement that Ivan has got now for December 31st of 2025. So Matt's here for any questions. I'm here for any questions you might have as well.
Madam Mayor, I have a whole bunch, but I'll let you
No,
start
you
the
go.
conversation.
No, you go ahead.
So I would like to have some discussion between council and staff for a few of these. Possibly an unpopular discussion, but I would like for us to have it. One of the concerns that's always been with the snack bar, even before Ivan, is there's a lot missing in sales and revenue to keep it open and whatnot and keep it staffed and all that. So I did have the question posed to me, would the city consider allowing alcohol sales during all events? And I don't know if that's even possible for school-sanctioned events like football games, but for other events, is there, I don't recall the reason why we prohibit sales at other events. And when the question was posed to me, it was followed up with, most people bring their own anyway. So I have to admit that I am very rarely up at the field, and I don't know that to be a true statement, but I would like the conversation to happen.
So in regards to, currently now there's a beer and wine license for the venue. And it is my understanding, I'll double check, that the school prohibits the beer and wine during youth activities, during school activities. And then we took that a step further and we extended that to our own youth program. So there are no beer or wine sales during recreation programs or high school softball games, football games, those types of things. In regards to softball, men's soccer league, those types of things that are adult programs, they can purchase, on site and drink there on site. It does need to stay on the patio. It's restricted to the patio, so that's what's standing now.
Is there any appetite to change that?
No, because I don't want to have a beer at my grandson's t-ball game,
Right.
I mean, it just doesn't seem right.
And I've been up there a few times during softball times, and my understanding is correct me if I'm wrong, those that play softball, but back in the day, you hit your ball, you pick up your beer, you run the bases with it. I think those days are long gone. There are probably beers that are coming in. I don't think it's probably as as much as it used to be. We do have a group that probably drinks up top, where they don't have to purchase it. So there are some control issues that can continue to happen, but it's certainly a lot better than it's been in the past.
Okay. And I'm not personally in favor of it, but it's a question that was posed, and I felt like everyone else. And then another conversation that was brought up was with regard to the use of the facility as the commissary. And I did not go back and watch the prior videos to actually write down the facts, but there was some discussion that we had about allowing anybody who does a food cart to use the facility as a commissary. Do I remember this incorrectly?
There was a discussion, Dan can fill in, but the situation is, depending on how it's done, is space on the inside, and they have to have storage outside as well. So Dan, you can speak to this.
Yeah, so the commissary up at the site or at any site needs to be approved by the health department. The health department's come, Matt's had them out, I think at least on one occasion, and it's been into multiple discussions with them. I talked to Sharon Davies as well this morning in regards to it and a few other things. So we're going down, Matt's going down the process, or actually Ivan was going down the process with Matt to have it permitted as a commissary. It looks like it will be permitted for at least one cart, possibly two. It'd be a real stretch to be three just because it's a small kitchen. Food storage is a big part of that. There's not a lot of storage there. I think we've made some arrangements for at least a cart there on the site, which is a requirement that the cart's on the site of the kitchen. So it looks like one will get approved, possibly two. Matt, through this process that he's committed to try and get as many carts up there as he can, but there's no guarantees.
Okay, so I guess I just want this to be part of the public record that whether or not the next lessee, whoever that is, would be willing to open that up to a commissary for other carts,
Oh, like.
provided that we could have the space.
Yes, and we put in here in good faith that they were going to try and do that.
Okay.
Staff would work with them to see that it happens. We've got a little bit of a relationship, and we'll continue that relationship with the health department to see that forward as well.
We did add language to the lease to at least try and pursue that. Good faith efforts.
Okay, I just read it differently, so that's why I wanted to ask the question. And then those were the two big ones prior, and then there's, and then we can open it all up. Those were
Well,
my-
go ahead.
Well, I have some other changes to the lease that I want to make, but I'll let
Okay,
us go
okay.
down
Comments, gentlemen? I guess I would like to say that I would like to take staff's recommendation. I know an option would be to go out for an RFP. However, if someone else got it besides Mr. Affolter, I think we would be starting over and then not knowing if that other person would then allow him to do it, because I don't think we could dictate if I got the lease that I have to put Matt in there. And since he's the only one, well, he's moving forward on his vending and definitely needs that space, I would go with the recommendation that you have.
Is that a motion?
Well, no, because Cindy wants to ask questions.
I'm sorry.
That would be my motion, though, yes.
Do we also, I didn't necessarily see any sort of security deposit. Did I miss it? Is there a security deposit required in the lease?
There wasn't one previous, but it's certainly something I think that
Okay.
could be discussed.
So my comments would be, one, to accept the letter of termination from Mr. Leyva. Two, allow for the transfer. I'm just going to throw out my notes. It's not.
Yeah,
I'm not saying this
sure.
is what it is. I'm just throwing out my notes. Accept the letter. I'd like to have staff inspect the premises every 90 days, just to do a walkthrough. To secure a 1-month rent deposit. Then in the lease, under item number 11, alterations and additions, I'd like to change that utility installations exceeding 5,000 to 1,000.
I'm sorry, say that one more time. What section?
Section item number 11, lessee shall not make any alterations, improvements, additions, utility installations exceeding $5,000. I'd like to see that changed to $1,000. And then I have a real concern about changing the name. So I'm not sure if it's still going to be named Vergie's or if the name of the business is going to be changed, or if that's just sort of a DBA. But I would hope that we would still keep it Vergie's Snack Bar.
I believe the idea was to change it to Catalina Dogs.
That's the DBA. I was just going to go with simply the Snack Shack, but I'm open to council suggestions.
I believe the Lions Club paid for the naming rights.
I believe that it needs to stay at Vergie's. I think you're right, Oli.
5 years, wasn't it, Oli, or something?
Yeah,
Oh,
It was for only for 5 years? That 5 years is gone.
that's $5,000 for,
I'd have to go back to the minutes of that meeting, but it was for a specified period of time.
So I would be curious to see what the specified period of time is.
that shouldn't hold it up, but
Right.
there's a reason it's called Vergie's, and there's hundreds of people in the community that will be very bummed if that goes away. So I'm not a super fan of that, and Ivan had kept it. So I just want to put that out there as a comment, and if it changes, it changes, but at least my voice is heard.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's good. Okay. Anything else?
Nope.
Okay, gentlemen. Matt, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, I think prior to approving it with those conditions, can we ask Matt if he's okay with the three,
Thank you, council, for your time and your concerns. Thank you, Cindy, for bringing that to my attention. I'm a big believer in tradition and history, and I couldn't agree more that things are named because there's a reason behind them. So I would personally have no problems with that. The lease alteration, number 11, the only thing I would be concerned is there will be required improvements to the storage areas to make it acceptable for a commissary. So we will have to put some money towards making this health department approvable. And those will probably cost more than $1,000. So I can submit an official proposal. I wasn't quite sure about the language on number 11.
It really, what I'm suggesting is it works in both of our favor. What it says now is if you're going to make alterations of $5,000 or more, you need to get prior written consent. I'm just asking that you turn your plans into the city for anything over $1,000, and so that the city knows all the alterations and what those will be. That it's really a win-win. It's just a number amount.
Thank you for the clarification, and I agree completely with that. I want to be as transparent as I can with the process, and along with the 90 days inspection, I have no problem with that either. All right. Does the council have any other questions?
I'm good.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Just for the record, and because I stepped out regarding a future agenda item, and I want to make sure that Dan had acknowledged that we had received another letter today regarding the ability to go into that Joe Machado field, so we had a total of 4, 2 written and 2 oral, just for the record.
Okay.
And if I can just add, I met with Ivan on Friday. We walked the kitchen. It is in great shape. He's done a great job keeping it up. I took some photo inventory of the equipment's in there and the condition it's in. So that'll be our starting point with the 90-day inspections thereafter.
Perfect. And in all fairness to those that were interested in sending in proposal, the original lease to Ivan, which we talked about at the last meeting, is such that we did give Mr. Leyva the right to sell the business under the term of his lease. And that is the one of the reasons that I would not feel it's appropriate to just say no and we're going to go out to RFP, because that was written in the lease that he had the right to do that.
Well said. Okay. Then I would like to make a motion to approve the staff recommendation to transfer the lease agreement from Snack Bar at Joe Machado from Ivan to Matt Affolter, Catalina Dogs, for an additional 2-year term with a 34-month option to renew, with the changes in like the 1 month's deposit and all those other things.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Call for the vote.
All ayes.
Great. Thank you. Item number 4.
Okay, item number 4 is the consideration of a transportation permit for Elizabeth Wenger, DBA Catalina Island Guided Golf Tours. As outlined in the staff report, this applicant is requesting a transportation permit. The routes are outlined in your staff report. It is for up to 3 vehicles. One has a commercial autoette sticker already, which she had a previous business, and I believe she wants to just transfer it to her new business. So that's 1 commercial sticker. Then there are 2 residential stickers. The applicant is in the audience if you want to ask her any questions. Year-round, but the days, depending on the demand of how much she would actually be doing it. So Elizabeth, you want to come up and just talk about your business, and council can ask you questions.
Hello, council.
Hello.
Hi. Do you want to ask me questions, or?
Do you have questions?
Do you want to just tell them a little bit of what you're proposing for it?
Sure. I'm using existing stickers. We're not asking for any new vehicles to go on the road. We want to be doing a guided golf cart tours, so we'll be marketing it online, and so the guest will book us. We'll drive the guest and do the highlight tours. It's in there, the route. There'll be 2 to 3 hour tours. And the reason I'm asking to use 3 different stickers is my goal right now is to use my 1 electric vehicle that holds 4 to 6 people. But if it takes off or we have multiple bookings, we would use our other sticker, which we'd buy a new vehicle for as well.
Would you explain the sticker scheme?
Well, I'm just saying because I'm not asking for a new vehicle permit to be put on the road. I'm using existing permits, golf cart permits, autoet permits.
So you've got the commercial one and the residential one?
Yes.
And where's the third one?
The third one's one of the gals that works with me. It's her personal one, if we were to use it, if we needed a third one.
How do you insure something you don't own?
That's a question for you, Elizabeth.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
How do you insure a vehicle that you don't own?
How do you what?
How do you insure it?
Insure a vehicle. That is a really good question. Whoever she's getting the permit from and the vehicle from would need to have the appropriate insurance.
And that's kind of a commercial insurance versus a residential?
That's the same as the other transportation permit type insurances, right? And the amounts that need to be, okay. So you would just have to have a commercial insurance policy
Correct,
on all the
three
vehicles?
vehicles, yes.
Okay.
And I want to note it, in case you didn't notice it in your staff report, council did authorize one of these in 2017, and that business, to my knowledge, is no longer functioning, and it was for one golf cart, and we came, and he, at the council meeting, was approved one with, if everything went well, it was either 6 months or a year later, he could add a second one. And staff did, because of council direction in all these past years, we stipulated as a condition not to be able to pick up at the mole, and so that's something if Elizabeth wants to address that, but staff's recommendation was only if they were at a hotel or at a house or wherever, any place in town, but it was not out at the mole, and that's always been because of the traffic flow out there when boats are coming in, and it's hard. So that's up to this council to decide what to do with that.
Well, I don't think that's an issue anymore.
No, I'm fine with it. I'm fine with not picking up at the mall.
Yeah.
I've already addressed it when we spoke about it the other day, so.
I didn't know if you wanted to
Well,
comment on it. And
I
fight
never
for it.
wanted to pick anyone up in what is actually the mall, the parking lot there. I want to stay away from that anyway. So I was just saying the ferry. So, but I've changed my, after you spoke to me about, I understand there's way too much going on there as it is. So I don't want I don't want that to happen either.
So my next questions are not specific to Elizabeth, but I want to ask them anyway. The gentleman that had this permit, that did this type of business before, the only issue that I could remember coming back to council or even being discussed was parking the golf cart down along Via Casino Way with a big sign on it, advertising for the tours. So I vaguely remember a conversation coming back to council. I don't even actually think I was on the council at that time. But that is, so advertising or conducting business on city streets was...
No, he wasn't allowed to do that. It was if he got a call and a reservation, he went down to a designated spot and picks them up.
Okay. And then another question that was posed to me was regarding conducting of business on city property. And I think this has to do with conducting transactions and payments and things like at the city park or at Lover's Cove, that your guys' business would probably be all online.
That's my intention, is to be all online, and we wouldn't do any financial transactions at all.
So that the business part would not be conducted on city property.
Well, I'll be driving on your roads, so.
Right, I'm sorry, the office business part of the tours.
Correct.
Okay, so you wouldn't be pulling up at the park and using the picnic benches and...
That's not the intention.
Okay.
I mean, I can't say that one customer might come and say they want to pay me in cash, but my intent is to have all online payments.
Okay.
And my site's set up that way too.
I would just like Parsac to review the insurance scheme, because I'm concerned.
So
Parsac just to review that we've got two layers, two different insurance companies insuring one business in town. And they're co-insuring us. And so if there's something squirrely, I just want Parsec to know about it so that they don't come back and get mad at us.
We have received that wording from Parsec for all things, so Elizabeth would have to adhere to that for each of her vehicles.
The limits of coverage, but also the fact that they have two companies representing, two insurance companies possibly representing one company that has cars that are doing business with us. It's just,
So if we approve two or more, that they would all need to be with the same company for,
Is that, so
Yeah.
you're referring to, because of the two residential, that Elizabeth, only one would have her own insurance and then the other resident?
so I guess the golf cart's owned by different people.
right.
And so that's why I think we need to make sure that we got the coverage that Parsec wants us to have.
Okay,
So that we're not left hung out to dry.
I would work that out with Elizabeth, yes.
Okay.
Well, then the question is, do we want to approve more than one at this time?
The first two are actually insured by the same company,
Okay.
the commercial and the auto, and the residential that belong to me.
But what is the commercial vehicle? Is that Daihatsu or whatever you have?
I had it for Island Caterers.
Right.
And was actually
That's the
issued
little
a-
pickup looking thing.
Pardon me?
What, the commercial sticker is on what kind of a vehicle?
It's on my golf cart. It's on the little truck right now, but it will be changed to a golf cart if I get permission
You would take
to
it
do
off
it. I'm
of
not
that.
gonna, yeah.
You're not going to drive around the back of the pickup truck.
No, come on.
I
Only
know,
when I
it's a
take
lot of
you.
fun.
No. So I mean, if the first two are insured by the same company.
Okay.
Maybe it would be appropriate to start out by approving the two and then maybe bringing it back to us if you feel the need is really there, because you're also going to have to list the Island Company and the City of Avalon as additional insureds, and the limits of the coverage at the $1 and $2 million. So maybe it makes sense to start with the two, and then
Yeah.
Cleaner.
it is cleaner.
I'm fine with that.
And then
I do already have insurance with both of you, and have you both additionally insured with the $3 million, so, because I have to do
perfect.
Conservancy's 3, so.
Oh, perfect.
Oh, wow, okay. So,
She has already received permission from the Island Company to
Yes.
travel on.
yeah. So two, and then do we want to have, like we did, have evaluate after 1 year or something, that's what we usually do?
Have it come back after a year and just evaluate?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
What we've done in the past, because staff will receive complaints if something's amiss, or if we have reports there's been an accident and stuff. If my recommendation, instead of coming to the city council again and wasting council's time, that if staff has any issues, then we bring it forward to you. Otherwise, it goes
Administratively.
Yes.
Right. Okay. And the other thing is, when you mentioned the advertising thing, kind of, but it's okay if they put something on their card that says what their business is, right? Because Ghost Tours had theirs and all that, so, okay, yeah. Okay, so is there a motion?
I will make a motion to approve the transportation permit for Catalina Island guided golf cart tours for 2 vehicles. Yeah,
Yeah,
there we go.
that's pretty much it.
Pretty much
Thank you
it.
so much.
I'll second that. It's been moved and
Oh, wait, I'm
seconded.
sorry, hold
it's-
on.
Did you want the one-year review?
Well,
But
we might not need-
administratively.
Yeah, since it's
Yeah,
administrative.
administratively.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I thought that was a given.
Yeah, that's good.
And
Okay.
and also the conditions of
Oh,
drop-off locations.
yeah, everything that's in there, of course. Okay, there's the moved and seconded. Call for the vote.
Who was the second? I'm sorry.
The
Annie.
mayor. All ayes.
Okay. Thank you.
Number 5, we have our finance director, Matt Baker, to lead us through the mid-year budget review.
Again, my name is Matt Baker, Finance Director. Just as a quick update as to why we're here, the mid-year budget review gives us the opportunity to look at where we stand after 6 months into the next fiscal year. It allows us to use updated beginning fund balances as a starting point for those projections. with the ultimate goal being to provide greater transparency to the public of how we've spent their funds and to operate with increased accountability to not only the public but to council as well. The beginning fund balances, just to let you know, I have used draft audited financials for our fiscal year 19 audit. I anticipate bringing before council the second meeting of March the completed 19 audited financials. So while these numbers could still change, I don't anticipate any significant changes in at least the cash balances between now and when it comes back to council. So this schedule here, I know it's small for those sitting in the audience or watching from home, is the fund balance schedule from our adopted budget. Again, how you reads left to right is starting with the beginning balance using this is based on what our figures were for the budget. Our assumed beginning balances plus any operating revenues minus any operating expenditures plus any grant revenues minus any planned capital expenditures plus or minus any transfers in and out of funds to get where we expect the ending balance of the various funds to be at the end of this fiscal year 20. So to make it a little easier to comparison, this slide is a comparison of what the assumed beginning balances were in the fiscal year 20 budget versus the audited cash balances. The main thing to know when you're trying to gauge a starting point, we've historically always used cash balances, and so that's what I've continued to do. But the one thing to keep in mind, particularly with the general fund and the harbor fund, is that there's a considerable amount of tax revenue that is generated in June that the city doesn't actually collect until July and August. And so when I'm doing my budget estimates, I'm taking that June revenue and assuming it in the beginning balance that I'm using to start with. Whereas if we're using a cash balance from the audited financials, we don't actually receive that cash until July or August. And so there's always going to be a difference in the beginning balance. And what I'm going to do then is explain kind of where the differences lie and which ones are attributed to this timing difference versus which ones are attributable to differences in estimates. So for the general fund revenues are using cash as the comparison, we're actually at a higher beginning balance, and that's primarily due to two factors. One of them is our property tax revenues were considerably higher than what was estimated when the 20 budget was created. That's mainly attributable to a one-time true-up payment the city received in late May as part of its county remittances. We do get this true-up payment for prior year activity every year, but due to a number of factors this year, we received a larger payment from prior year activities than we historically have, so that's something that would be hard to forecast when we're putting together the budget. The other thing was grant revenues from fiscal year 19, and so those would be grant revenues, some related to Five Corners, but primarily to several parks projects that were grant reimbursed. They were omitted from the 19 estimates, and so that's a major driver as well from the beginning balance standpoint. Harbor Fund, you can also see there's a difference, but it's in the opposite direction. That again is primarily due to the timing difference. If you look at working capital as the starting point, the balance would be about 2.3 million. That's because we have large wharfage payments and ad tax payments that we don't receive till July or August, but those would have been assumed received in my June beginning balance number. Cruise ship wharfage, though, was below where I estimated. That's largely due to payments we made in fiscal year 19 for fiscal year 18 marketing incentive payments. So when I was putting together the estimate, I didn't consider that payment in that estimate. So the cruise ship wharfage revenues for the fiscal year 19 were down from where I had estimated them to be. And again, various other differences in revenues and estimates account for about $150,000 of that difference. So if you use working capital as a starting point, the beginning balance is more like 2.2, 2.3, but if you use cash, it's 1.8 for the Harbor Fund. Again, I apologize, this one is also small, but this is all of the budget amendments that we have brought before council from July 1 to December 31st. I'm not going to go through all of them, but the one that I do want to highlight is the one on the bottom, and that was for the new wastewater treatment plant contract. So again, in October, when we brought before council the interfund loan from the general fund to the sewer and saltwater fund, we didn't know the exact amount of what the new contract increase would be. We knew there was likely going to be an increase in the contract amount. We now know the increase in that amount. It's approximately $180,000 split between the two funds. So in total, as a result of the unanticipated cost of service study that we requested in the amendment, the 10-year CIP study, and the new contract amount, the total interfund loan is approximately $300,000. So again, we brought before council a not-to-exceed amount of $400,000 for that. So we did want to provide ourselves a cushion in case it went over. It fortunately is under, and so that $300,000 is going to be repaid by the sewer and saltwater funds over a 5-year period. The schedule here is the beginning, or the fund balance schedule with updated beginning balance numbers, as well as updates for any approved budget amendments that happened before December 31st. Kind of the main thing that you can take away from this slide is if you look at the general fund particularly and transfers out, the majority of the draw on fund balance from the general fund is transfers to other enterprise funds, namely the transit fund as well as the sewer and saltwater fund. For the sewer and saltwater, that's that interfund loan that I mentioned, whereas the transit fund has always historically been subsidized by general fund revenues. So now a slide with some good news. This is our general fund revenues as of mid-year. If you look at the pie chart to the right, that's where our budgeted general fund revenues come from. What you can see is over half of our general fund revenues come from our hotel TOT, our hotel and vacation rental TOT, transient occupancy tax. Sales tax is the next largest, and those two account for about 70% of the city's general fund revenues. The hotel portion of TOT is up approximately $400,000. $180,000 of that is a one-time payment we received based on the findings of a compliance audit that we performed earlier in the year. The other portion of that is from increases we've seen in our hotel TOT revenues, and I'll go into a little more detail on the next slide on that. Again, sales tax is also up, with property tax and admission tax slightly up as well. So on the whole, good news for the general fund. It did get mentioned earlier, so I'm going to bring it up now. We do have the ballot measure for sales tax. The one thing I'd just say keep in mind is it's important now to be building fund balance while we're benefiting from a strong economy, so something to keep in mind. So again, the hotel TOT was up about 5%, and where we saw that increase from wasn't from increased visitors or increased rooms rented. It was actually appears to be driven by increased room rates. Just a night for night count comparison, hotels were slightly down, but they were up in terms of the average price per room. So that's what's driving the increase in the TOT revenue, at least as far as hotels. I would assume the same would be true for vacation rentals, but I haven't gone to that level of detail. We did budget growth at 2%, and as you can see, we're outpacing that. I did not make any changes to any of the revenue estimates in the budget for the second half of the year, but hopefully when it comes to year end, we will be able to report a positive results there. Again, the reason for the sales tax increase, our second largest revenue in the general fund, is partially attributable to new businesses that opened in the year, as well as county and state pooled revenues beating the projected amounts. And so what I mean by that is when we purchase things here in the city on Amazon or Target or anything online, there's a county pool for those revenues, and we get a percentage of those. And so if the estimate for those is higher, our share of that can be higher than what we projected it would be otherwise. Again, here's a breakdown of general fund operating expenditures broken down by major categories. I did not include capital expenditures in this just because they fluctuate based on the timing of the projects and the nature of the project. So this is just salaries, maintenance and operation, and contract services. The one thing I want to highlight in the other category, as you can see, there's large amounts in maintenance and operations and contract services and other. What those are is for maintenance and operations, that is the chamber promotion budget, so the 22% of the TOT I've grouped in that other category, and that's the vast majority of that $760,000 amount. The other for contract services is the hospital pass-through, so the hospital receives a 0.5 cent sales tax that the city receives and then transfers to them, so that's what that contract service is showing up in the other category. The ones I want to kind of bring attention to is the fire department labor. So generally with labor being over 50% at the mid-year, that's not something I would be all too concerned with. And the main reason for that is there are certain labor-related expenditures, namely workers' comp, that we pay the full amount at the beginning of the year. So if an account's slightly over 50%, that isn't necessarily cause for concern for me. However, with fire, looking at the overtime numbers, we are over where I estimated we would be at this time, and that's largely due to unanticipated absences we've seen, namely with trainings as well as other reasons where workers have been out, have forced additional overtime to staff at full levels. Law enforcement, why I've highlighted contract services, I don't know if everyone remembers, but we had budgeted more than the contract actually came out to being, so we didn't have an approved sheriff contract at the time we went to budget, and the amount we budgeted was more than the contract ended up being, so there is some budget savings there, if you will. Public Works contract services as well as planning I will talk to you in more detail on the next slide, but as you can see, those are also outpacing where we would expect they would be at mid-year. So in addition to the fire overtime, there are two other budget amendments requested in the staff report. One being for the planning to reallocate $40,000 budgeted to general administration legal expenditures to the planning department. I have a slide later in the presentation that shows legal expenditures on a whole, at least as far as the city attorney is concerned, are below where they were this time last year and are on track to be slightly under the current budgeted amounts. However, the amount that we have been charging towards planning is higher than what we previously budgeted. And that's primarily due to the number of planning-related initiatives, whether it's looking at CUPs, accessory dwelling units, the rental inspection program, that have led to increased planning-related legal costs compared to prior years. Again, legal as a whole looks to be under budget, so we're just redistributing funds that were allocated to general admin legal fees to the planning department. And then the third one is for a Public Works professional services contract. Last year, I want to say in December, we contracted for some ADA compliance consulting. We did not start that work until fiscal year 19, but we did not encumber those funds in our 20 budget. So we had the funds in our 19 budget, but we didn't start the work until fiscal year 20, and those funds weren't encumbered in this budget. So the majority of that is going to general fund public works, but a portion of that is also coming out of the harbor. And that was a 70-30 split that was discussed during the time that contract was approved. Harbor Fund revenues. So again, this is just looking at operating revenues. So the portion of wharfage dedicated towards capital and any grant funds aren't reflected in this schedule. As you can see, with the exception of cruise ships, harbor revenues are slightly down compared to this time last year. I'd say the one positive takeaway I can say is looking at January monies that have come in for December. It looks like we had a very strong January, partially attributable to having both cross-channel carriers in operation this year, whereas last year one of the carriers was not. January cross-channel wharfage just for the operating portion was actually up about 30%, so that's 45,000. So I think there's reason to be optimistic that the second half of the year we can close some of that gap since we've been benefiting from nicer weather. Hopefully that will be translating to nicer revenue figures in the second half. Again, similarly, this is a breakdown of harbor operating expenditures. As you can see, from an operation standpoint, salaries and benefits is the biggest expenditures in the operating funds. Just to highlight contract services and the public works side, that includes our lifeguard paramedic services, as well as our trash contract and our restroom maintenance contract. For the operations, that is just our shoreboat services contract. So I just wanted to call those out because they are larger amounts. And similarly with Fuel Dock, the driving expenditure there is just the fuel cost for the fuel station. Sewer, saltwater, solid waste, so these are the other main enterprise funds that we have. Revenues are in line with budget. If you look at where solid waste is, why it's slightly down is our construction debris revenue is slightly down from this time last year. But on the whole, the direct assessment revenue, it looks like it'll come in around where we had budgeted. Again, on the sewer, saltwater, solid waste from a expenditure side, the main driver is the contract services, and that would be for the wastewater treatment plant for the sewer and saltwater, and then for the landfill and waste pickup for the solid waste fund. Again, why you see those well under budget is because a lot of the additional costs that we requested with our budget amendments, we're not going to start paying those until the second half of the year. So while we're well under 50% now, I expect those to come in close to the budgeted amounts.
I have a question.
Yep.
On one of the pages, the beginning balance for salt water was a negative 24,570, right?
That was what we had in our budget, yes.
Or what we didn't have. Okay. And then how did all of a sudden we get all this money?
So this right here is our, just from the revenue side. So this isn't our fund balance. So if we go back to this comparison slide,
right.
We see that the saltwater fund ended up having a
negative.
Basically, our audited balance shows the cash balance being zero for saltwater. Again, if we go to this slide, we do see that we have draws on our general fund to offset the operating costs of the sewer and saltwater fund in particular. That's one of the things we're looking to address as part of the cost of service study that you approved.
Yeah.
Ideally, what we'd be looking at is for the charges for those to cover their operating costs. And when they're not, the general fund is available to subsidize, but it's as a best practice, the enterprise funds should pay for themselves.
Yeah, that one's a mess.
So in the coming council meetings, we will have a presentation from the consultants that we brought, kind of outlining what the costs are to run the sewer and saltwater system. Again, what we found from the last cost of service study to now over the last couple of years was that there were certain amounts for contracted services, like the Falcon contract was one that went up beyond what we estimated, and all those increases that weren't estimated in the cost of service study that was previously done resulted in essentially draws on fund balance to pay for them. And so we are right now working with Public Works and working with the city manager to make sure those costs are being captured in the new cost of service study. So we are charging a rate that covers the operating costs for those funds.
Okay, thank you.
So real quick on internal service operating expenditures, we have 3 internal service funds, and this is how we charge for the various activities that all the funds benefit from. So for example, finance does the AP and payroll for the harbor as well for general fund activities. So this is how we are able to account for those costs and then divide those costs up amongst the various funds. So admin includes finance as well as elected and general government costs. If you look at the dollar amounts in salaries and benefits, you see that while the percentage is similar to the prior year, the dollar amount is higher. That's really due to changes to how we allocated the city manager's time, the assistant city manager's time, as well as having the assistant city manager for the full year, whereas last year that position was filled after the mid-year. But from a budget standpoint, we look to be in line with where we would expect to be. Maintenance and operations and contract services for admin. For contract services, that would be IT, the city attorney, as well as any auditing and accounting professional services that we receive. Just to call out on the insurance fund, you can see that we're at 95% of the budgeted amount, and last year at this time we were only at 76%. That's because we had to request a budget amendment last year for a true-up payment. We don't anticipate having any true-up payment, so I don't anticipate, at least in the maintenance and operations, any additional expenditures there in the insurance fund. Contract services is higher than in prior years, and that's largely being driven by current litigation. And so that's litigation beyond what our city attorney works on for us.
Okay.
And then the second to last slide is it says legal expenditures, but it should say city attorney expenditures, and I'm sure Elizabeth is happy to see, and I'm sure Scott would be even happier. We are on track to come in below budget. Last year, we spent a total of $457,000 in city attorney costs. This year, we had budgeted $447,000. As you can see, we've currently spent $171,000 through December 31st, so that would be invoices through November, and that would be the same as last year for that time. So you can see we're under where we were in this last year. We did have the request for the budget amendment to transfer some from that was allocated to general admin to planning, but the overall amount budgeted we're not requesting to change. And then lastly, real quick, Bob or others can speak to the projects better than I can, but I just wanted to provide a quick update on capital projects that we've spent $50,000 or more year to date through December 31st. As you can see, information systems, that was for the new servers as well as some new pieces of equipment, laptops, things of that nature. We're mostly complete with that project. There may be a few outstanding invoices, but for the most part, that has been completed. Five Corners pedestrian project, Cabria Mole Phase 1. Since December 31st, I've received invoices about $800,000 between now and then, so the dollar amount and the percentage may look low, but if we were to draw this as of February 20th, it would look considerably different. But I would like to thank Audra and the grants team for turning over the reimbursements timely. So that Mole Phase 1 and Phase 2 are grant reimbursed at 80%. So that's just something to keep in mind. And then lastly, the sewer projects are largely completed. I understand there are some outstanding invoices for that, and Bob assures me we'll use every penny. But we are largely complete with those projects as well. So with that, if there are any questions or items for further discussion?
You got a couple, Cindy?
Are you guys all tired of me talking tonight?
Never.
Thank you. You've answered several of my questions already. One is, I just want to put it out there that I'm still not in favor of having the vehicle replacement fund grouped together in one big fund. And I don't know if that's maybe an offline conversation that we should have as to all the benefits of why we should do that. But to me, it seems like if the different departments are going to set aside money from their budget each year for vehicle replacements that they know that they need to do, then they should have their own vehicle replacement fund. That money should be going towards specifically vehicles for that department.
And it's something I can definitely look into, and there's also a way where we could still use the vehicle maintenance fund, but set up separate accounts within it to make sure if, say, the fire department is allocating $50,000 for a truck, that we can clearly call out that, so that's something we can look into. Whether it's that fund or dissolving the fund, it's something we can look into if that's.
Just giving it a little budget number. I mean, because we tapped into that money already.
Right.
With recently, we took trucks. Yeah. So.
I just, both of my next two things are fire department related, which is hard enough. But if the fire department is going to budget $50,000 a year for replacement of a fire truck that they know in 10 years' time they're going to need, then I've said it for years. I do not want to get to that point and have us say, oh, well, gosh, we spent that money on this, this, and this. Because they've taken it out of their budget, which has potentially reduced trainings, reduced, things that they wanted to do because they sacrificed that money looking down the road. And, same with all the other departments, but that's just one. The expenses for a fire truck are far greater than the expenses for a code enforcement vehicle.
And we can continue offline, but maybe one thing we can do is set up where for capital projects they're tracked outside of the vehicle maintenance fund. So when fire wants to go for a vehicle, they have their money that's been set aside, and just use the vehicle maintenance fund for, say, the mechanic's time, which is spent partially working on a boat one day and then the next day changing the oil on a fire truck. So there's probably some options we can do to better track when a department is setting aside funds.
And then my next question is probably more of a question for Chief Krug, but the question was posed to me a little differently than the way that I'm going to ask it. But the budget amendment is asking for $75,000 to cover overtime costs for employees in the fire department. Hypothetically, what if the council said no? What services would be cut to the community?
The other option we'd have is to look for other places within the budget to reallocate from. There are restrictions to how much we could do that. Beyond that, I would have to defer to Mike. My understanding is we've made sure we're fully staffed, and Mike can probably speak to that better.
Mike Krug, Avalon Fire Chief. I'll be honest, I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
The expenditure, I don't know if Matt already went over it, but the cost of sending a new hire, a new recruit to the academy, and we had an injury on duty that resulted, or a workman's comp injury that resulted in a significant number of shifts being covered with overtime until that person was able to come back to work. That's where our shortfall in the overtime budget has come from. And but beyond that, I think we'll be on par for the remainder of the fiscal year, barring anything unforeseen. But if we were just told no, quite honestly, I don't know. I would defer to Matt.
I didn't know how to answer the question when it was posed to me. It's been I'm not going to be shy. It's been a topic of conversation for many, many years about the overtime for the fire department, and I think you've done a lot of work along the way to reallocate how hours are done and whatnot. But I didn't know how to answer the question. My first thought is, well, maybe we wouldn't have a fireman on duty for a certain period of time. I don't know.
Right.
I just don't know how to answer the question.
I don't think anyone's in favor of that. I don't think anyone's in favor of reducing services that are already at below a minimum standard or below a minimum staffing. So, and many times we have to recall personnel, and when that happens on calls that go beyond the first alarm, then that results in overtime as well. So, in theory, even if you had reduced staffing, you would end up having to call back people on overtime when there were calls. So, and the problem's not unique to the Avalon Fire Department. You'd be hard pressed. I guarantee you can't find another fire chief in the nation that doesn't have a significant overtime budget.
Yeah. Okay. Good questions.
And then the other one was, I think you mentioned we're going to have more conversation on the enterprise funds. So my question would be, could we help develop a plan to help balance those fees. And I know this has been Ole's project for several years, and we've done a lot of work on it, but I just want to continue to have those conversations.
So when we do come back, and I want to say it's right now planned for, don't quote me, but I believe the second meeting in April is right now where we're looking to bring the consultant over. And we will break down what the operating costs are in the sewer fund. And if during this discussion, if there are places, council feels we could cut back costs, that's something we could look at as a way to build fund balance there. The other option is looking at the rate side to grow revenues to cover those costs. And part of that is not only covering the cost, but building a fund balance. Bob assures me there's plenty more work to do on the sewer. So we done a lot of great work this year on the lift station, but we're building out a 10-year CIP plan, and so that is also going to be captured in the cost of service study. So we'll be able to point to what projects we are building fund balance towards building, and the reasons for it will be outlined in that 10-year CIP plan.
In April, can we also report as where we blew it 2 years ago?
We can. I mean, I can speak somewhat to that, but we can definitely bring it back. One of the areas was utilities. Our freshwater utility was significantly higher beginning in 2016, and it was a regulatory requirement that changed the salinity. There's more to it. We can definitely bring that back for discussion in the April meeting as well.
Cool.
Great. Okay, then council, questions?
I just want to make note that I find it I'm uneasy right now, knowing that we've found $125,000 somewhere and it's resulting in a budget net negative of $50,000. I just want to make that note.
Matt, do you know what he's saying?
I think what Carl's referring to is despite the budgeted savings found with the sheriff's contract amount, we are still requesting additional funds drawing on fund balance. I think is that fair?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to receive and the report of the mid-year financials for 1920 and authorize the following proposed budget amendments. A, decrease amount budgeted to sheriff's contract. B, increase the fire department overtime expenditure budget. C, rebudget city attorney retainer expenditures. And D, increase public works professional service expenditures.
Second.
Moved in second. No further comment. Call for the vote.
All ayes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 6.
The next two items will be public hearings.
Okay. So I guess do we want to?
Staff report first, sorry.
Yes, thank you.
We have Amanda Cook in the audience, and this is on to introduce and hold a public hearing and consider an ordinance of the City of Avalon pertaining to accessory dwelling units.
Accessory. Come on, Amanda. Step right up.
So this is an ordinance where we are incorporating all of the newer changes that the California's legislature has, or whoever it was, imposed all these new statutes for accessory dwelling units. We adopted an accessory dwelling unit ordinance year before last, but in the state's continuing drive to assist cities in creating housing, they made some additional changes for accessory dwelling units, and so we are adopting, modifying our ADU ordinance to incorporate those changes. So there's very few places where the city has discretion in these ordinances, and so we took that to the Planning Commission. They made the choices that they were able to make, and so we're bringing that back to you for your review. The primary changes related to junior accessory dwelling units. They made some slight modifications to the sizes of units, but we're still pretty restricted on the things that we can do for the accessory dwelling units.
Right.
So if you have any specific questions for me.
The only request that I would have is, do we have the ability to say no to additional golf carts for ADUs?
I think we do, but we would have to do it through the vehicle code. We can't require, we're very restricted on what we can do as far as parking when it comes to accessory dwelling units. And so this question's been asked before, and Scott said what we would have to do is in our vehicle code say that accessory dwelling units would not qualify for a vehicle because golf carts are registered to addresses, not people.
So I definitely want to bring that back sooner rather than later. And also let's say that somebody's required to have off-street parking and they're going to convert their garage to an ADU, that they would have to find parking for their vehicle. We can't require that.
No.
A garage conversion, you can no longer require them to replace the parking.
Even if in order to obtain the permit, or
Sacramento's got us again.
I think if I'm reading your mind.
I hope so.
Where you have the instances where people don't live here year-round, and they have a golf cart that has to be parked off the street at night, they would have to make a decision about their property and how they use their property as whether or not they want to give up their golf cart in order to give up their parking for the ADU. But they would still have to find a place to park that vehicle.
But in your ADU ordinance, the city can't require replacement parking for the lost garage.
I think you guys together just answered that question, because it does say, the law says if you're going to have an ADU, the owner of the property must reside on the residence. So that would be, so you wouldn't be able to have that as a vacation rental and have an ADU attached to it.
That was one of the few places that we had discretion, is where we could say that accessory dwelling units could not be a transient rental.
And we did it, and we
Right.
paid 60 months.
I'm sorry, right, but what I'm saying is that if I have a 1,500 square foot home on the flats and I want to convert my 500 square foot garage into an ADU, and my 1,500 square foot unit house is a vacation rental, an active vacation rental, you couldn't convert that to an ADU because that vacation rental is already required to have the owner of the property residing full-time. That's the way that I read the
vacation rental doesn't require.
No, the ADU does.
The ADU requires,
The ADU requires.
Section F, owner occupancy, an ADU that is created after January 1, 2020, but before January 1, 2025, is not subject to any owner occupancy requirement by state law.
So for the first 5 years, that is
Until
not.
2025, we can't require owner occupancy. At that point, the law changes, the existing law sunsets, and a new law springs to life that does allow us to, at least as of today.
Until they change it again.
Right, at least as of today.
Where was that again?
It's letter F. It's under general ADU, JADU requirements, section 9.
Bless you.
I'm sorry, 9-5.605. Those are page numbers.
604.
Here. 605. Owner occupancy.
It's the sixth page of it.
Oh, I apologize. I missed
Okay.
that. Then, okay. Well, I still want to, where ADUs are actually creating housing, which is fantastic, but we could have 50 of those in the next year come before us, and all of a sudden 50 more golf carts on the streets. That's what I want to avoid.
So we want to get it in the vehicle code before Edison starts giving out water.
Well,
Right now, that's the only thing holding it up.
Okay, well, under parking, it says the exceptions are if the ADU is located within 1/2 mile walking distance of public transit. Right. And most of them are. So we could deny, they wouldn't have
Okay.
to have the vehicle.
That you can't require parking if you're can't
within.
require off-street parking if you're within that distance of public transportation.
Right. Okay. So if there's no further comment, we'll open the public hearing. It's now open. Anybody like to comment?
Yolanda Montano. This has been on a discussion at the Planning Commission
Sure.
last meeting, and we feel I concur with the parking. We were going over and over it because we're trying to adjust things according to our city ordinance and what works best with our community. However, going through all of it, we're trying to figure it out because the state trumps everything. You know, trying to, because it said if you'd have to, if you build an ADU, you're required to build a parking space. And then you were concerned about taking that parking space away and then, but if you're within a half a mile of the residency, which everything is, then you wouldn't require a parking. But I was a little confused as well because the ADU is one of the it states that you don't need a utility box. You don't have to get your own. You can tie into the existing. That is the whole point of these units, is to be able to affordable building. And in that case, when that happens, is it like another residence? Because it's attached to that home? Because if that's the case, then is it an extra like address? Because if it's not an extra address, then you can't have a vehicle anyways. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Because what it says is you tie into the existing unit.
Right.
You have to have that single family dwelling in order to create that, and it's half the square footage as a one. So maybe that's something we can look into as far as being able to find a loophole not to have a vehicle. I'm just saying.
I think we do it in the municipal code, the vehicle part of the municipal code, where we say ADUs are not eligible for golf carts.
Okay, so if we do that, then it
Right.
won't. Okay.
That's my request.
Okay. And then another thing that I had a question on as well, and there's a little confusion going on with the ADUs because when you're tying into the existing utilities, and in the new state law, it states that you don't have to wait for water.
Oh, right.
So I think we need to really figure out if we can have the attorney figure out or somebody figure out what that law is before we start handing out ADU permits and taking money for the permits and assuming they're going to be tied in and getting water. So that's something that's really important. I think that we need to figure out before we start handing them out so we don't get into any lawsuits. And maybe work out with because the Edison is saying no, but the state says yes. So I'm confused. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Yoli.
That's a fair question because there is a discussion out there about, someone wanting to create housing, which is great, but why should they be able to jump somebody who's been on the list for 8 or 9 years?
Right.
I'm not familiar with the state language that says they don't have to wait for water. So I would have to research that or let Elizabeth have an opportunity to research that.
Okay. Yep.
Edison has taken the position that they're separate dwelling units or they're separate living space, and they are going to require a water allocation.
And they are required a water allocation?
They will require a water allocation, except in the rare instance where you're taking a 4-bedroom house and you're taking those existing bedrooms and converting them to an apartment, then because the bedrooms already exist, there wouldn't be an additional water allocation required.
Yeah.
Is there anything else? Let's close the public session. Public hearing?
Look, whatever.
Council, what's your pleasure? Somebody to make a motion to adopt the resolution?
Oh,
Thank you.
that's so nice.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I'll introduce and waive all further readings of an ordinance of the City of Avalon, amending Article 6, Chapter 5 of Title 9 of the Avalon Municipal Code to provide reasonable regulations on the development of ADUs and junior ADUs throughout the city in compliance with the new state law, and hold a public hearing for that ordinance.
I'll second.
Further comments? Call for the vote.
All ayes.
Thank you, Sacramento.
Yeah. Okay.
Number 7 is a continued public hearing from our last council meeting. This is on the development impact fees, and Michael Palmer is here to go through your options.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Mike Palmer, Assistant City Manager. As Denise just mentioned, this is a continuation of the last City Council meeting's public hearing. So at February 4th's meeting, Council had directed or requested City staff to provide any answers or questions or concerns to allow for some additional time to chat and also to look at what other potential options could be done. Over the past 2 weeks, we have fielded a few questions. There was one slight minor change to the municipal code, and it's just onto the development impact fee section of the municipal code. All that was really done, and it's to the section 9-18.108 subsection D, and this is just talking about the establishment and annual adjustment and imposition of development impact fees. But what we did was we clarified some of the language to make it very explicit that nothing of the development impact fees precludes the city from entering into a development agreement with a developer. So we just wanted to make that very explicit. It was already implied. We already had the ability to do that, but we changed that one section of the code to allow for that. So the other question that I've had over the last couple weeks was, what kind of developments do we have in the pipeline, and is there any sort of estimation on the kind of revenue that can be generated? At the December 3rd Planning Commission meeting back in 2019, as part of the annual growth policy for 2020, one of the attachments on there was the Southern California Edison wait list. On that wait list, there was approximately 23 listed projects and potentially another 3 projects that were added to that list there. It's not really a great estimation for us because it really just talks about what the wait list is for, where the location is, what type of request is it? Is it for a new construction? Is it for a remodel construction? And then it talks about the requested usage in terms of water, but it doesn't really tell us a lot in terms of square footage and the potential of revenue that each of these projects could generate. That said, what I can do is kind of extrapolate some data and make some inferences. So of those 26 potential projects, 10 of them could be exempted. These would be projects that could be remodels that aren't adding anything significant to the square footage, property that existed outside of the city limits, that were more for new construction projects or modifications to the existing, new meter on an old line, which would not trigger a development impact fee, or something like adding a washer or a common area that might not necessarily have a huge impact. It could be they might be eligible for a capacity charge, but not necessarily for the development impact fee. So that would leave you basically with approximately 16 non-exempted or construction projects that could be subjected to development impact fees. On that list, there were 2 new houses proposed, 3 new multifamily, 6 additions to an existing housing, so they were proposing to add additional bedrooms or something significant that could be listed. What we can't do is really tell whether that would be an accessory dwelling unit or not, and remember, accessory dwelling units under State code are exempted from paying development impact fees if they're 750 square feet or below. So you would take the difference if it was 1,000 square foot ADU, and they would charge them small, like 250 square foot difference. So if we use that math just to run through, and I didn't want to bore everybody with too many facts and figures since there's already a lot of numbers floating out there. But if you, let's say you had an addition, and that addition was 200 square feet, and it was under the residential, that would equate to about $6,400 in additional charges. A 90 square foot addition would cost about $2,800. If I were looking at something like a 15,000 square foot, let's say hospital, under the hospital section at $17.63 per square foot, that would equate to roughly a $264,000. So you can start to see scale. If I start looking at, depending on the size, a 1,000 square foot house would equate to about $32,000 in additional fees on top of the other fees that we have. So I know that there were some concerns there. So that said, unless there's any quite objections, there's essentially 4 different options what we're going to propose here. The first option is to go with the original recommendation, and that original recommendation is to continue the public hearing, adopt the resolutions, accepting the findings of the Nexus study, and establishing both development impact fees and capacity charges as proposed, and then introduce and waive any further readings of the ordinances. Alternatively, what council could also consider, should you wish not to pursue that route, is you could adopt development impact fees, and we wouldn't have to go back out and modify any of the categories or the Nexus report, but you could choose any of the development impact fees categories that you would like to apply, and you could adopt those without having to do any additional modifications. So there's 6 categories: fire protection, parks and rec, government and public facilities, circulation, transportation, and landfill. And let's say you're really passionate about development impact fees being applied for landfill and fire. Those would be the ones we would adopt, and we wouldn't worry about adopting the other ones. Alternatively, you could do away with adopting development impact fees altogether, and you could choose to move forward with just adopting the capacity charges. Capacity charges are very similar to development impact fees, but these are for just the wastewater and the reclaimed water only. Or the last option is to say, thanks for the report, we appreciate this, however, at the time, council is not interested in pursuing this any further, and you can receive and file the report and direct staff not to continue to pursue that. So if you wanted to look at what the charges are, these are kind of the development impact fees and capacity charges. The first slide was in its entirety, and you can see if we were just looking at development impact fees without the capacity charge, it drops it down from, if you took the capacity charges out, it goes from $32 on the residential to $24 per square foot. And you can choose any one of those line categories. If you want to look at just what capacity charges would look like in its entirety, that's the next slide. Those for residential would be $7.47, and it ranges all the way up to, per room on lodging, because it has a much bigger upsize connection and whatnot, of $4,000. So the scale is kind of there, and I'll put it back to the recommendation, and then if you have any further questions.
Do we want to talk about it first or open the hearing? Talk about it.
Yeah. So I'd like to thank you for bringing back those options. I just think that I'm for development impact fees. They're necessary in some situations, but the way it sits right now, and what I brought up last council meeting, is I just feel they're too high. We want to promote construction people to have houses that need to be redone. And if we're looking at the way it sits right now, if somebody's doing a 3,000 square foot house, they're close to $100,000 in impact fees. I mean, it's just too much. People will not do it. Even a 1,500 square foot house on the flats would be $50,000. So we have a development agreement for large construction. So we're really only talking about small single family or duplex units. That would be, and there are very few that are going to be done in town. So I wouldn't want to pass this the way it is. I like that we have options of which ones we can take out. If we can bring it down to something that's more reasonable, that we can all agree on, then I think that would be acceptable. I think Parks and Rec, I just, that's a high number. And are we really, you know, I know that was based on the Nexus study, but are we really going to have that much land to develop on? So that would be one that I would be willing to completely take out and see what that brings it down to. That'd be 2470, which would bring it to 24,000-ish for a 1,000 square foot home rather than 33. I think that's the start.
And Steve, on that, and I'm sure you know that, but for the people out there, that when they do this Nexus study, they had to consider the price of the land.
Yeah.
And I think we know that the only way we're going to be able to build is if land is donated. You know,
or something is done under a development agreement, which,
exactly, of course,
if we were to do anything with Parks and Recreation, it would have nothing to do with this. It would be done under a development agreement with a landowner.
Right, exactly.
So it doesn't. I mean, I agree with Steve right out of the gate. I would remove the Parks and Recreation. Or drop it down to like 25 cents per square foot, just so we could do upgrades and things to our existing parks.
Just a note, should you wish to bring that back, that would require a change in the Nexus study. So what I'm trying to do is give you options for you to continue it today and make a decision. If you want to go line by line and let's say modify the Nexus study and we can eliminate projects, we would have to go back and redo and make changes to the Nexus study and then bring that back for another public hearing altogether. We'd have to go through the whole thing. So it'd either be eliminate the line or lines that you don't want if you want to pass it today. Either way, I'm good.
So we wouldn't have to bring it back. We just eliminated a category.
No, you can. So if you want to eliminate Parks and Rec completely, you can eliminate that right now. And let's say government and public facilities. You can eliminate both of those two, adopt the rest of them, and I don't have to make changes to the Nexus study. But if you want to eliminate projects to reduce each of those lines within there. So if I've got 10 projects in Parks and Rec and you only want to prioritize 2 of those, that would require us making a modification to the Nexus study and then bringing that back.
But we can add them back in.
Correct.
Or we can add them. I mean, so along the lines, I would like to keep fire protection, circulation, transportation, and landfill.
So Annie, before you get too far in your discussion.
I know we have to have a public turn, but I'm just saying that's just.
But also, I mean, I got to say, number one, I absolutely disagree that projected revenues from recommended impact fees and capacity charges is going to be $42 million.
Over so many years.
Where are you at with that?
I'm on page 5. So I disagree with that just off the cuff. We're not going to get $42 million in 10 years' time over for that. Additionally, we are not going to have growth based on historical numbers in between today and the general plan of 2030 of 1,000 additional residents on the island. So I think that because those numbers are skewed in my mind, that's what's making it difficult for me to say let's charge these rates. I just don't see how it's possible that we're going to get $42 million in development impact fee revenue. Maybe over the next 100 years.
Okay, well then, I hear you, but you're saying.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I don't know what went into those projected. I'm guessing that this is optimal. We don't enter into development agreements that we collect the full ability of fees per project for every single project that's planned from now until, I want to say 2030. Is it necessarily the most realistic? Perhaps not, but that's just a projected revenue. Like you said, some of those could fluctuate.
I mean, I get it, but it's part of the public record, and myself nor anyone else that I've talked to can make the argument that we're going to receive. If we knew in 10 years' time we could do $42 million in revenue, this would be made a decision a long time ago. But that's not going to happen. And the big projects that would generate a lot of potential revenue are going to be done under a development agreement with the city. Additionally, a hospital, okay, let's just put it on the table. You're talking about $264,000 fees from the hospital. Who's going to pay that? We are. The taxpayer is going to pay that. That's not going to come from a developer who's going to develop a hospital. That's going to be another item that's tacked on that we're going to have to pay as the citizens of Avalon to build that hospital.
But not necessarily.
The other consideration, though, to
Not necessarily.
just what the development impact fees do is it gives us a more transparent idea of what the fees are cost for development. And so if you were to enter into, let's say, and we'll use the hospital as a hypothetical, but let's say you use the hospital and you enter into a development agreement. I know now that part of the negotiation and part of the bargaining chip that the city now has is $274,000 to enter into that development agreement to say, what can you do in lieu of or in trade to either reduce in full or in portion? So it gives us better leverage to enter into development agreements instead of right now we don't have water, we don't really have land, we have nominal fees, and I'm not trying to discount that. It's just another tool.
Right.
That's all.
I totally understand that. Okay, let's open public hearing. Comments from the, Lisa, come on, there's not many of you out here, so come on, somebody say something. Okay.
I will say I did receive one comment letter from a resident not in favor of development impact fees.
Anything? Okay.
That was the same email that you guys received.
Great.
When did we get that?
Today at 2:30.
Yeah, I didn't.
Oh, today at 2:30. Oh.
So I think the thing to remember about these in the positive is that they can't be used for upgrades, correct? They cannot be used for upgrades to existing infrastructure. They have to be for new development only, correct? The funds that
There's,
come in.
yeah.
Yes.
The funds
They can't fund
generated,
deficiencies.
yeah, it's only for.
Right, so this can't upgrade a park that's already there. It can't fix a sewer line that's already broken. It's only for new. If we get into the habit, and I agree with you that they're high, they're too high. However, they're based on the projects that they're hoping to fund and what the state of California requires us to have as the count for estimated growth from the general plan, which I don't agree with. We know it's too high, but we have to have it in the general plan because it's required by the state, which has been something we've discussed and tried to see if there's a way to change. So my concern, though, is that it's a big fee because we've never assessed it before. It doesn't mean it's not something that doesn't happen in other places, which it does. It doesn't mean that we're not in line with the percentages. We're actually lower than the majority of cities that are common or larger than us. But my concern is that we're looking at short term of what's too expensive to cost to build and cutting our ankles off to save money that we would hope to have later, that we're then going to have to go out and try to find in some other place. So I understand how overwhelming this seems and how much more money it adds to the bottom line of projects that would benefit the city, the hospital, housing, workforce housing, but there needs to be perhaps some solid ground of understanding that some of those projects need to be added to be able to have the city and the community grow so that we're not ending up in a shortfall later.
Right.
So that's, I don't know, I appreciate the options, the alternates that you gave. I feel personally sad that the first thing to go was Parks and Rec, let's get that out of there. But I understand because it's not necessarily emergent. It's not something that is so, yeah.
And Lisa and I agree too. I know I can't even look at Dan.
But he can't provide better if that he doesn't have the money to provide better. And I know that other departments are trying to go out and seek money elsewhere. But then if this fund becomes the fund that allows to have the matching happen for a grant that's out there,
right,
and we're saying, well, no, we're going to take that off. It seems short-sighted.
Well, I think for me to get some of this stuff passed so that it happens, but Michael Palmer made a very good point. We can look at that Parks and Rec. We can take off the $2 million expenditure for the cost of the land because we'll never have $2 million to buy the land, I don't think. I don't know. So I think we can look at those and get them back in maybe a more realistic sense. And I hope we don't have to contact that outfit and pay them a whole bunch of money, right? We're gonna have to. We
No,
do.
if you do that, you would have to.
Have
Yeah.
to go back to them?
Yeah.
Okay, well, we might need to budget that for July. But, okay, any other comments? Carl's not with it? Well, oh, there's Carl in the back, and Rob didn't bring his Carl, so, okay. I'll close the public hearing. I'm just gonna say it real quick. I would go with approving those. I mean, we have spent a lot of money and a lot of time, and for the final hour to come back with, we don't like this, is frustrating, why it didn't happen a year ago. So I suggest we do the fire protection, circulation, transportation, and landfill, and the capacity charges, and the wastewater and reclaimed water.
I'm sorry, say that again. Fire protection?
Fire protection, circulation. I don't know,
Wastewater?
what, transportation, I don't care, one way or the other. I mean, landfill, wastewater, and reclaimed water. So the capacity charges,
So everything but Parks and Rec and government and public facilities?
Yes.
And transportation.
Well, and what's the transportation, it's different, no, transportation, circulation, I thought that was all one.
No, it's two different line items.
So there is 7. So, just really quick, what's the difference in the circulation and the transportation, Mr. Palmer?
I'm pulling it up now.
Okay. So circulation is, I see the circulation one.
Yeah, on the transportation facilities, they're talking about improvements later on to the Cabrillo Mole and then some active transportation projects. There is some overlap with circulation. Circulation's potential projects would include the future Five Corners intersection improvements, one-way street designations, one-way pairs, pedestrian controls, safe routes to school, those kind of things. So
We'll have to, what, I'll take.
Here's how about this. Here's a 5 I had. Fire protection, circulation, transportation, wastewater, and landfill. And that comes out to 15.8%, which cuts it about in half.
15.42.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Parks and Rec and government are gone, and then everything else?
And just other, yeah. So we're just get rid of those 3.
2.
3.
Parks and Rec, oh, and government and public facilities
And
is
reclaimed
one.
water. Because reclaimed water, aren't we, if we get the grant with Edison and our water situation changes, are we really ever going to go to reclaimed water? Or what is that for?
Yeah.
We already have sewer.
that's for a future system. So right now the city's doing a feasibility study and we're getting close to finishing that up. But to look at what would be the costs associated with moving away from a saltwater system to a reclaimed water system.
Okay.
And there's some potential, the study is indicating some potential favorable results because we already have a dual system. So
Right.
half of those costs for converting over, we already have implemented.
Yeah, we've been talking
Well, we don't
about
have the
this
capacity, though. We don't have the reclaimed water storage capacity.
I'm sorry?
We don't have the storage capacity for the reclaimed water. We use more salt water in a day than we can store today. So if you look at the amount of salt water we use today, it's more than the capacity of both of the holding tanks we have. But right now, we're pumping during the day. We're replacing it. And we wouldn't have that opportunity under reclaimed, because reclaimed, you basically have to have the water in the system. And right now, the system's not big enough for that. We'd have to greatly increase the size of the system.
Yeah, I mean, that would be part of the feasibility study, but
Well, and then again, when I'm looking here, I'm sorry, Steve. The wastewater and reclaimed are 2 different numbers.
Right.
So I would say keep the wastewater number, but not the reclaimed number.
If you did that, it would bring it down to $12.36 per square foot, residential square foot.
And we can always add it back in if we want to.
But
As long as
then
we don't
how
change
does
it.
that, I guess we would then have to go through each of these line items and oh no, I'm sorry.
No, we're doing
I'm so
categories.
sorry, never mind. I
cut yourself.
misspoke. I misspoke.
Okay, so we got, oh, then Denise is doing a little addition. I can't believe Matt doesn't have his calculator out.
so we're keeping fire protection, circulation, landfill, and wastewater, and we're taking out reclaimed water, which is a capacity charge, and then transportation, government and public facilities, and parks and rec.
So we would be
That what I'm
going with the
hearing?
4.
Yeah, so you're going 3 development impact fees and 1 capacity charge.
Everybody slow down. Fire protection?
Fire protection.
Weren't there more than one capacity charges besides wastewater and reclaimed?
Hold on, let's go in order for a second, just so
Okay.
we're all on the same page. Fire protection, I think I see nods. Circulation?
Yes.
Transportation?
Yep.
Yes?
Oh, I said no.
Landfill?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then
Wastewater.
wastewater. Now, my only question is, Mike, are you okay with separating wastewater and reclaimed? Can we do that, or do we need to go back and revise the?
They are listed as separate wastewater charges. That's correct.
But you're saying yes to transportation? I thought you
Yes.
said no earlier.
I think we ought to throw it back in there.
I think they said yes, because it's the 5
Wait, with
corners.
the transportation, it's going to be grant funds.
It's grant funds. The Five Corners is grant funds.
It's never all grant funds.
It's
right?
got elements of the Cabrillo Mole Terminal improvements future, as well as some active transportation projects, which are fairly broad. It does include some of the 5 Corners, but 5 Corners is also listed in the circulation element.
I'm okay with that one. That brings it to 15.8, which is half.
About half.
Yeah.
I think that's a great compromise.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, Owen Maymal, second it. Further comments? Call for the vote.
All ayes?
That's the end of the dream.
So just so we're clear on what we're voting on.
Just watch the video.
Just for fun. So you've opened and closed the public hearing.
Yep.
Yes.
Nicely done. You are adopting the resolution accepting the findings of the development impact fee nexus study.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you're accepting the study, and then you are approving introducing the ordinances related to fire protection, circulation, transportation, landfill, and wastewater capacity.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was your motion, and
Yep.
somebody
Yes.
seconded. Annie Marshall. Correct.
Happy birthday to you.
Okay.
We have a closed session item.
And go ahead, Denise, you want to announce our closed session?
We have 2 closed sessions this evening. The first one is public employment performance evaluation on the city manager. Second one will be the City of Avalon acting as the housing authority, and it's conference with real property negotiators. Property is 309 Beacon Street. Agency negotiators is city manager and the assistant city manager, and Tara Matthews of RSG. And negotiating parties is Thomas Saffron and Associates and Cantamar Villas. And under negotiation is price and terms of payment.
Okay, thank you, and thank you, everyone, and good night, Tony.
Good night, Tony.
Okay.
We have an audience.
And we're back from closed session.
We have no reportable action.
Okay, thank you very much. Good night, Tony. Meeting adjourned.